We now have our first 2023 Rugby World Cup finalists in the All Blacks, as New Zealand go on to defeat Argentina at a canter by 44 points to 6, in which was a dominant display from the word go. The Argentines started off really quite nicely, actually, putting some good phases together into the All Blacks 22. But as always, the All Blacks defence came out on top and managed to really hold the Argentinians out. They managed to get into 22 relatively comfortably, but as soon as they got 10 metres out, every single inch became almost impossible, and Emiliano Boffelli settled for the 3 points, which was one of his 2 penalties in which he kicked in this game. The All Blacks managed to keep Argentina tryless, which is a massive statement going into the South Africa or England game, looking more likely to be South Africa. I think it was really important that the All Blacks treated this as a proper test match. They're always expected to blow Argentina away, but to treat it as a test match, to play direct, in which was one of the things that really impressed me and surprised me. The All Blacks have all of these great skills, but quite a lot of the time they stuck the ball up the jumper and played sort of pick and goes or one-off phases, one-off passes per phase to really try and cross the advantage line and really front up, in which they're definitely going to have to do next week. 7 tries from the All Blacks, in which was very impressive. I thought the All Blacks would do very well in this game. I didn't expect them to really put 7 tries past Argentina. I was thinking more around the 5-try region, but some clinical displays, especially in the first half and early parts of the second half, which really took the scoreline away and into the All Blacks' favour. Who scored the tries? Well, Will Jordan got a hat-trick and will be devastated not to have got a 4th, with Richie Mo'unga not giving him that final pass, which would have set him as the record holder for most tries in a Rugby World Cup, which is currently sat at 8, tied with many other great wingers. Geordie Barrett also crossed over the line early in the second half. Some really good stuff inside the first 20 minutes from the All Blacks. They definitely came out with an intent to put on a show and play some real quality rugby. And then Shannon Frizzell got a brace, which from a forward is very impressive. We saw Cyril Bay get a brace in the quarterfinals last weekend, but Shannon Frizzell crosses for a brace in this game. It's a really good direct running from Shannon Frizzell. He's one of the ball carriers in which the All Blacks really do turn to for some go forward. If you look at Sam Cane, he's probably not the biggest of ball carriers, more specialises in the tackle and jackal and ruck area. And you've got Adi Tavere, who can do it all, but Shannon Frizzell, especially in the carries, is very effective. And then Aaron Smith crosses the line. The scrum half definitely knows his way to the try line. He's got a very good scent of it. And he's not one of those players that you can drift off. He really does give it a good snipe, so you have to keep your eye on him, because he does find his way to the try line. For a scrum half relatively frequently. In terms of what each team did well, I thought the All Blacks' defensive displays throughout was really impressive. Our first phase, not necessarily the best defence. It was solid defence, but what really impressed me was the ability to cover and the ability to really put your studs in the ground as soon as the heat got put on them. Some good carries from the likes of Kremer for Argentina made the Argentines get some good go forward momentum, but then it was instantly repelled by some brilliant All Blacks sort of second wave defence, as I like to call it. The scrum from the All Blacks was just really impressive, going into what will be a big final against either England or South Africa. Once again, leaning more towards South Africa. Not leaning, probably falling over towards the South African side, because I do think they'll get the job done. The scrum time is going to be really important in that game. It almost could define the match, and especially the maul as well. The maul for the All Blacks was a huge weapon, gaining many penalties off of it, which was very impressive. And then when we also look at the maul defence of the All Blacks, one of the areas in which I feel is one of their weaknesses, they were very impressive. They repelled an Argentinian maul by about 10 metres when they entered their 22, which was very impressive. And in the first half, the All Blacks were clinical. As soon as they came into that 22, their red zone efficiency was very classy, which is what you expect, obviously, of the All Blacks. What did the All Blacks not do very well? I thought some of the second half handling errors was a little bit sloppy, especially in sort of the last quarter of the game. There was only an amazing try from Will Jordan, which was an inside ball off the line out, very similar to what we saw against Ireland. And Will Jordan chipped and chased, regathered and scored. So it was only really a moment of genius from an incredible rugby player in Will Jordan that scored the try at the end of the game. In the latter quarter, things didn't quite gel as well. Damien McKenzie came off the bench. He added some good energy, but ultimately it didn't really result in many points, considering I just thought some of it was quite loose. They weren't quite as tight, and I guess they've got half a foot into the final of the Rugby World Cup. So they obviously don't necessarily want to play sort of pedal to the metal. And then the goal kicking, that was one of my main concerns. I'm aware a lot of the goal kicks were from very wide out, in which Richie Mo'unga would have to really get behind them well to kick him over. But he was 50% off the kicking tee, which if you go into a Rugby World Cup final and you leave 8 points off of the kicking tee on the pitch, that's the difference between 52 points and 44. In this game, that makes no difference to the score, but in a game against the Springboks, most likely, that is a very, very sort of difficult position to put your team in. I'm sure the kickers will be sharpening their tools going into the final. In terms of the Argentinians, I thought they were very physical. They did very well to, especially off first phase, to really put in some solid hits. But ultimately, it was the skills of the All Blacks to play multi-phase which really broke down the Argentinians. They never gave up. They kept playing to the very last minute. They had a scrum on their own 5 metre line, and they gave it everything. They tried to play from deep throughout the game, which made for a good watch as a neutral. And they looked dangerous at points. I mean, I'm not going to give them an awful lot of credit in terms of their attack, because they did look lost for ideas at points, but especially off the first couple phases, they did look like something was brewing, especially with the likes of Kremer, Issa and Gonzalez getting over the gain line. You thought if there's quick ball here and the execution's on point, they could come away with some points. But ultimately, it was a mixture of sort of not necessarily that clinical execution from the Argentinians, but also some brilliant defence from the All Blacks, which ultimately prevailed. And in terms of what they didn't do well, I thought they struggled at the breakdown. Likes of Sam Kane, Ardy Sarver, Frizzell, Whitelock as well. They made a mess of the Argentinian breakdown. There was a lot of penalties in there, and it was a bit messy, which they would have liked to tighten up on. And then, in my opinion, their attack sort of faded away after the first 2 to 3 phases. They had a real good go for the first 3 phases, and then they sort of run out of ideas, resorted to, at times it was a poor grubber kick or a kick to the air, which really had not that much impetus and sort of direction around it. It was more just a hit and hope, which was a little bit disappointing. And ultimately, they were just simply outplayed. New Zealand are just a phenomenal rugby outfit, and you have to be completely on your game to even give yourself a chance of staying within a try scoring opportunity at the end. So ultimately, it was a brilliant performance by New Zealand. The one sort of blemish on their record is the yellow card to Scott Barrett. Scott Barrett, against the Springboks last time out at Twickenham, he gave away a silly penalty and gave away a silly yellow card as well and spent 10 minutes on the sidelines. He's done the same again in this game for something which was just so avoidable. He's on the floor, he's out of the game, and he decides to sort of slap away at the scrum half. Just completely unnecessary, cynical. It wasn't necessarily in a dangerous position, but it's just so unnecessary. It does make you question, is he keeping his head in the big moments? And when it does come down to the small margins against South Africa, you need every man you can have possible in that defensive line. So Scott Barrett will definitely want to tidy up on some of his potential psychology there, or just staying in the moment right throughout the game. Do not let the fact you're in a big lead or the fact that you're tired really interrupt your decision making processes. But on the whole, an unbelievable performance from New Zealand. Ultimately, it wasn't as good a watch as any of the quarterfinals, considering the game was very lopsided and there's only ever going to be one winner prevailing. But the All Blacks come away with the spoils and book themselves a place in the Rugby World Cup final next weekend, which is shaping up to be a very, very tough, but once again, a very, very compelling contest. Let me know your thoughts on the game in the comment section down below. Was it as you expected? Did you expect the Argentines to put up a bit of a bigger fight, or would the New Zealand back to their clinical best? Let me know in the comment section down below. And thank you very much for watching.